Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome to stately Vaughan Manor, where today we're going to be talking about some wild mammoths. Some wild mammoths that I'll be dealing with next year. Yes, very long books. Some very long books that I've been meaning to read for some time. Next year is where I'm going to be tackling them. Or at least I'm going to give it my best shot. So Mammoth. So 2022 for me is looking like the year of the mammoth. And I was thinking about this, and I was actually thinking about it for a while. I read The Stand recently, which was gigantic. And during that time, there were some booktubers that left some comments, and a couple of them have said, I don't really like really giant books. And I've heard that before from some booktubers on their channels, how sometimes some booktubers, not there are exceptions, of course, but there are some booktubers who will avoid really, really big books, which makes sense if you're on BookTube and you want to, read a bunch of different books so you can make videos off of a bunch of different books. Not everybody is really old like me and have read like thousands of books already. And I think that's probably one of the reasons novellas are so popular now on BookTube. Everybody seems to be talking about novellas like all the time. But the big old books, they don't get enough attention. I mean, unless you're Malazan. If you're Malazan, you get attention. But otherwise, not so much, it seems like. So, I've got some big books that I'm going to be reading next year. I'm going to be tackling a few of them, on top of everything else that I'm thinking about reading next year. And what set me to thinking about it is a particular book. And I started thinking about it the other day when I was putting together my review of the new annotated Dracula. And there was a picture in there of Varney the Vampire, a penny dreadful from Victorian times. Now, the first time I saw that picture of Varney the Vampire, I was just a little itty-bitty child, and I was reading a book about vampires from the library. And it had a little paragraph describing the sordid events of Varney the Vampire, and it talked about what a penny dreadful was. And I was really interested. I'm like, wow, this sounds great. Well, it turns out that Varney the Vampire was a penny dreadful. It was serialized in these little booklets. And it was a serialized horror novel. And it was really, really, really long. And by all accounts, really, really, really bad. It's supposed to be not exactly the finest literature in the world, Varney the Vampire. Shock. But I've always wanted to read it ever since I was a little kid. And now that I'm an old man, even though I know that it's going to be bad and just cheesy and terrible and awful, I do want to read it. And so I'm going to read it. And I made some notes here about Varney the Vampire because I ordered a 2-volume edition of Varney the Vampire from Pulp Lit, I think. And I think this is the best version you can get, I think. Now, this edition clocks in at 1,366 pages, but I think that's double columned because this is a novel that is 667,000 words. It's a very long book, Varney the Vampire, or The Feast of Blood, which was written by James Malcolm Rymer and Thomas Peckett Prest. I'm not sure who did what, but this was a very long, serialized novel that just kept going on and on. It's very episodic. Apparently, different parts of it and somebody's shooting off fireworks. Always a celebration here at Stately Vaughan Manor. Sorry about that. Where was I? Oh yes, Varney the Vampire. So Varney the Vampire, it's way long and way bad. But I'm going to read it because it is actually historically important when it comes to horror novels. It is a vampire novel that predated Dracula and Carmilla, I believe. And a lot of the vampire tropes came from Varney the Vampire. Varney the Vampire, a vampire nobleman who apparently hates his condition as a vampire. So I'm really interested in reading it, even though I know it's going to be bad. I mean, apparently it's so bad that as it goes on, characters like their names just change for no reason, probably just because people forget, you know, they forget what this character's name was because it was like way long ago when that section of the novel was published. I mean, it's that kind of thing. Apparently it has no real plot. It's just this big episodic long mess, Varney the Vampire. And I'm going to read it so you don't have to. And I'm probably going to do a series of videos on Varney the Vampire about Varney's adventures as I go along. Somebody ought to, I guess. So yeah, I'll be reading that. Just because it's been one of those things I've always wanted to do since I was a kid. Even though I know it'll cause me suffering and pain, probably. But I'm looking forward to it. Varney the Vampire. So yeah, that is the big one, probably, that I'll be doing at some point next year. One that I will be doing right away is a read-along that I'm going to be doing with David Wiley. It's David Wiley's read-along of The Lord of the Rings. The Lord of the Rings. This is the extra fancy illustrated edition. You'll notice it does not have its dust jacket that I just had because tragedy ensued. Something really terrible happened to this book. So I cut my finger. And I didn't know how bad it was, and this book was sitting on the table, and I was like over the table, and I'm like, oh, I didn't realize this was so bad. And all this time I'm bleeding on my really extra fancy edition of The Lord of the Rings, and the cover just happens to be like matte. It's a matte cover. It's not like slick or anything, and so the blood just soaked into the cover. And I'm like, oh my goodness! And so I grabbed the book and I tried to wipe it off like an idiot. That was my first reaction. And of course it just tore it was a disaster. Disaster happened to my edition of The Lord of the Rings. Tragedy. But you know what? This kind of looks good anyway. Just like this. It'll look better on my shelf anyway. Like that. So yeah, this is how my edition is. But anyway, sorry about that aside. This is one of them because I will be reading this is all one book. And how many pages is this altogether? I think it's 13. No, wait. It's 1,100 something with all the appendices and everything. Yeah, 1138 before the index. So this counts as a mammoth. This is the one reread that I'll be doing next year. Now, another one that I've been wanting to get to for a long time is a penguin mammoth, and that is this one. This is The Mysteries of Perry by Eugene Sue. Eugene Sue. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. You know, I can't pronounce anything. You're aware by now. The Mysteries of Paris. I will read a little bit from the back so you know what this is about. This is another serialized novel, an early one, and a very influential one. Sensational, engrossing, and heartbreaking. The Mysteries of Paris is doubtless one of the most entertaining and influential works to emerge from the 19th century. The original city mystery novel, its intricate story unfolds around Randolph, a magnetic hero of noble heart and shadowy origins. When Randolph rescues Songbird, a young prostitute of breathtaking purity. Okay. from an attack by a ruffian called Slasher, he sets off the dominoes of a heroic narrative traversing the social divides of a city where the fortunes of the rich and the poor are more entangled than anyone can imagine. So apparently this was serialized in 150 episodes in a Paris newspaper, and it was like a huge deal, this thing. How long is this? How long is this book? Well, there's an epilogue here, and so altogether, 1,300. Hold on. It'd be nice if I check this stuff first. 1,363 pages, this one. So yes, I'm also going to get to this one, The Mysteries of Paris, another book I've been wanting to read for a long time. I'm just going to do it next year. Just going to do it on top of everything else. There are a couple other mammoths. You know, I mentioned Malazan. This one I was hoping to get to this year. Memories of Ice by Stephen Erickson. This is the third Malazan book. I read the first two Malazan books earlier in the year. I think the first one I read before I was even on BookTube. It was that long ago. So Memories of Ice is the third one. And this one, I'm probably not going to get till next year. Not going to be able to get to it until next year. And this one is 925 pages. So it's short compared to those other ones. Just a little book. A wee little thing. So yeah, Memories of Ice. Because it looks like this year is spoken for, actually. There's a bunch of other stuff I'm probably going to get to before that. And then House of Chains. I got to get to at least 2 of them next year. I want to wrap up Malazan within the next 5 years. If I can manage it. And this one, House of Chains. How long are you, House of Chains? 1,013 pages, it looks like. It looks like House of Chains. So those are some big books, and there are probably other big books I might attempt. Next year, I'm going to be into the 80s with my Read Every Book by Stephen King, but I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get to it next year. But I might, but that's another gigantic book. I think that's the next really big one from... That's the next big one from Stephen King. And I've got other books that I'm going to be reading that are like 400 and 500 pages. So I got a lot of big stuff coming up ahead. Kind of ginormous, some of this stuff. So, yeah, that is my future. Reading plans, my 2022 Year of the Mammoth. Already thinking ahead. Always thinking. So yeah, there you go. Tell me what you think of this. Am I insane? Probably. I probably am. But hey, what about you, fine folks? Will you be having a Year of the Mammoth of your own? I would be interested in any mammoths you might be tackling next year. That would be interesting. Okay, my fine friends. Catch me tomorrow for the Sunday Penguin. It won't be a mammoth. I don't think that I'll be talking about. But yes, catch me for the Sunday Penguin. And you guys, have a great day.